Hello, and thank you for joining us. I am Shaka Reed, the Business Development Manager for the Prince George's Chamber of Commerce, and your host and moderator this evening for Black on the Block, providing the Black community with access to informative health and wellness practices, exposure to Black-owned businesses, and knowledge about the importance of Black businesses. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Pearl Elegance Foundation, the Greater Washington Community Foundation, and the PhD Project. I have a few questions to share this evening, and I hope you all will stay relaxed and join us. But before I do, I'd like to introduce a few of our special guest panelists. So we'll start with Professor Isaac Adai.
Greetings. Thanks for having me. My name is Isaac Adai. I am a professor in the College of Business at Tennessee State University, where I teach business strategy and entrepreneurship. I'm also a member of the PhD Project, which is an organization that supports minorities as they pursue doctoral degrees in any business field, and that's specifically African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Dr. Leon Prieto.
Hey everyone, I'm Leon Prieto. I'm an associate professor of management at Clayton State University, and I also serve as an associate research fellow at Judge Business School, the University of Cambridge. And I'm also a member of the PhD Project, which is doing an awesome job increasing the amount of African Americans, Native Americans, and Hispanics in business to pursue their PhDs in business.
Thank you. Lauren Jones.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Jones. I am a licensed clinical social worker in Washington, D.C. and Maryland. I'm also the executive director of Propel Production Center Incorporated, which is a nonprofit that uses the arts to discuss mental health and emotional wellness. So I'm excited to be here and discuss all things business with you guys.
Thank you. And last but not least, Armani McMillan.
Hey, I'm Armani. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm the founder and executive director of Impact DMV Incorporated, a grassroots nonprofit organization based in Prince George's County, Maryland, that cultivates various no-cost college access programs that have helped youth in the DC metropolitan area receive over $7 million in scholarships. So I'm looking forward to discussing, as Lauren stated, all things business with you all.
Thank you. So if you all are ready, let's get started. First question for you all, and please feel free to chime in or move to the next question if you so feel moved. So the first question, let's talk about the history of Black businesses in America. Specifically, who are some of our business pioneers?
Well, I would like to take this question and talk about some of our pioneering people of color that really promoted entrepreneurship. And I have to give credit to W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington for being proponents of Black entrepreneurship. I know people tend to focus on their disagreements, but one thing they had in common was their passion for Black entrepreneurship, and they promoted it with their writings. And Booker T. Washington, he started this organization known as the National Negro Business League, which had chapters all over the United States and Africa and the Caribbean. And he really promoted Black entrepreneurship. And some of the leading Black business pioneers that we may not have heard of include Annie Turnbull Malone. She's the first Black woman millionaire in the United States. Most people think it's Madam C.J. Walker, but Annie Turnbull Malone, she actually gave Madam C.J. Walker her first job in the beauty industry, right? And so Annie Turnbull Malone, she created jobs for thousands of women in the United States, Canada, the Caribbean, even in the Philippines. So she had an international business with her brand, which was called Poro. So she was a pioneering Black entrepreneur. And another person I have to mention as well is Magilina Walker. And she was based in Virginia, and she was the first Black woman to open a bank, and was called the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank. So she was a very pioneering individual who promoted feminism. She encouraged Black women to start their own businesses and to obtain jobs. And she was a groundbreaking presence in the Richmond, Virginia area. And last but not least, another person we should know about is Charles Clinton Spalding. And he was the longtime president of the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, which was located in Black Wall Street in Durham, North Carolina. So Durham had a very popular Black Wall Street that should be commended for the amount of jobs they created and opportunities they created as it relates to economic development among the African American community. So those are some of the leading figures that we should know more about.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in? Professor?
Sure. Prieto mentioned Booker T. Washington, and he inspired many entrepreneurs after him. One in particular is A.G. Gaston from Birmingham, Alabama. A.G. Gaston in the 1920s formed the Booker T. Washington Burial Insurance Company and grew as an entrepreneur through providing insurance. He also went on to start a bank, a savings and loan institution. But something else that he did, which was significant as a Black entrepreneur, was he helped to finance and support the civil rights movement in Birmingham, which we know that many Black entrepreneurs were also a part of. So he's another historic figure that we should all know about.
Thank you. Ladies?
Yeah, I think that I really appreciate all of the information and all of the specific people that were just mentioned and all of those that weren't. Although it's also really important to mention just the essence and the spirit that seems to be captured whenever we talk about Black entrepreneurship or Black business. And that is one of resiliency. That is one of grit. That is one of courage. You know, that is one of collaboration. And I think that just mentioning the spirit, hopefully that carries on from the inception all the way up to what we're doing right now, present day.
So important. Thank you. Armani, did you have anything to add?
I think everyone has done a great job of just listing prominent Black entrepreneurs that really paved the way. As they say, they walked so that we all could run. I know for me, I really love focusing on a lot of Black leaders. One of my favorites who really inspires me on a daily basis is Shirley Chisholm. And I really live by, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I feel like that really encompasses a lot of the people that were named, like Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, because they paved the way and made a way out of no way. So I think it's great that they were mentioned.
So really quickly, thank you all. Black Wall Street and the historical centers of Black commerce. Can we hear a little bit about that, please?
Sure. Booker T. Washington, he's the one who came up with the term Black Wall Street. And it mostly refers to the Greenwood of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they had a very prominent Black Wall Street that was burned to the ground in 1921 by racist and white supremacists. And due to white rage at that point in time, they really, curtailed a lot of the efforts to really promote economic development within that region. But there are other Black Wall Streets as well. And they had figures like Jesse Binger, who started a bank known as Binger State Bank. We had Anthony Overton. And then in Durham, North Carolina, they also had a very prominent Black Wall Street with figures like John Merrick and Aaron McDuffie Moore and Charles Clinton Spalding, who started a business known as the North Carolina Mutual. So throughout the United States, there were a number of Black Wall Streets that really contributed to creating thousands of jobs. And hopefully, we could get back that spirit of entrepreneurialism and really start growing small businesses and large businesses alike and try to recapture that spirit during that period in which Black Wall Street flourished.
Thank you, Doctor. Speaking of that spirit, let's talk about the first steps that we need to take if we want to start and own a business of our own. Professor?
I don't mind starting with that particular question, given that I teach and do consulting and entrepreneurship. I have a specific approach that I use when I'm working with anybody that has a business idea that they're thinking to take to the next level. And I call it purpose-driven profits. I believe that everything we do as people of color and entrepreneurship should be grounded in some deeper sense of purpose. And there are some specific reasons beyond that. Once we've understood what our purpose and how that may manifest in the entrepreneurial space, I then tell folks to think about opportunities that exist in your direct community, in your environment. Once you've identified those opportunities, what based on those opportunities essentially solves some painful problem point for a customer, you've then found something that you can build a business on. So once you've identified a way to address a painful problem, thinking about a business model that will allow you to then deliver value to your particular target market is the act of entrepreneurship. Many people from our communities have great ideas, and we also have entrepreneurial energy and passion. We often lack having strong business models that allow us to deliver value to our customers on a consistent basis and in a way that's scalable. So I employ everybody that wants to start a business to think about how you can develop a strong business model. And if you want a tool that can help you think through your business model, look up the Business Model Canvas. It's a very foundational tool that helps you think about entrepreneurship and building blocks. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you. I heard you say value more than one time. I appreciate that. Value, 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 value. So that's great. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Yes, thank you. I will say that within the nonprofit sector of starting a business, we are very heavily focused on what the problems or the challenges is within the particular community that we're serving or looking to serve. And when we do that, sometimes we trap ourselves by thinking almost too big as far as our niche. We want to serve everyone, everywhere. It doesn't matter who you are. So I would encourage that when starting a business, it's great to have that passion. It's great to have that heart. I don't want to douse that flame, but to think critically and creatively about ways to serve a very specific target and to realize that you're not the only entrepreneur out there. There is a community of entrepreneurs who all are within your community and want to support in different ways. So figure out how you can serve a specific niche down, get very specific, and fill a very specific gap. And whether or not, again, with the really, really big ideas, sometimes we might want to do a product, sometimes we might want to do a service, sometimes there might want to be a hybrid. So also niche down, figure out where you want to start first. You don't have to do everything all at once day one.
I also feel like it's about a partnership too. From some of the things you said, if you're wanting to do different things, if it's a product, if it's a service, it might help to maybe have a partner in another small or Black-owned business. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, most definitely. I think as an entrepreneur, it's easy to get swept up in the idea of, I need to figure this out independently in order to be successful. I almost have to prove myself within the entrepreneurial space to show up and say, yes, I'm of value, I'm important. But without collaboration and connection, we're really not going to serve the problems that we've gone into business to address. So I definitely think it's important to mentor up. I think it's important to collaborate and partner and get support in all of those needs in order to have a sustainable business.
That's good. Before we get to that next part of like how to successfully maintain and sustain, Armani, did you have something to add?
I did. And it's a great segue from what Lauren was just mentioning, because my biggest recommendation is to find a mentor. I definitely think in the Black community, many of us are the first entrepreneurs in our families. We have no one that we can really lean on. And of course, online resources are great, but finding someone who's literally been in the shoes you are about to step into is one of the greatest things you can do to really help you map out a business plan, figure out if your idea is scalable and profitable, because a lot of times we may have great ideas, but that does not mean that that's a great business idea. So I do think mentors can help keep you grounded. They can also share their mistakes so that you can avoid making similar ones. And more importantly, they can connect you with their network. And that's normally a group of people who can really help you in a multitude of areas, because even if you have an amazing business idea, there are still so many other facets to go into it. For example, you're going to need a website. You're going to need a strategic plan. You're going to need so many different things. You're going to need funding. And a lot of times that's going to be very difficult to find on your own. And you cannot do it on your own. Lauren is exactly right. It takes a village. It takes a team. Every great business that anyone idolizes, they have a strong team behind them that supports the executive director or that supports the CEO. So I do think getting a mentor should be one of the first steps a future entrepreneur takes.
Thank you. Professor, I see you want to chime in.
I was just going to double down on the power of relationships, especially as it relates to Black entrepreneurship. You know, as the ladies spoke on, networking, collaborating is key. I think we can never do enough of that. I meet many entrepreneurs who are seeking to start businesses that someone 2 blocks over is already struggling with, and they don't know that. And so coming together may help them both solve problems that they're both working on. If you read the book E-Myth, it talks about needing a technician, a manager, and an entrepreneur to be successful in business. And one person typically can't fill all 3 of those roles. So collaboration is key.
Thank you so much, everyone. So the culture of Black business, is it similar or is it different from other cultures? Doctor?
Well, we have to keep in mind, that Black folks are not a monolith, so we all have our own varying personalities. And a lot of times businesses take on the personality of the owner, so if you are very reserved, serious-minded, your business's culture might reflect that. And if you're someone who is fun-loving and laid back, that might be the ultimate culture that your business might reflect, But one thing we should consider is that a lot of the Black businesses during that period known as the golden age of Black business from 1900 to 1930, they pretty much had a spirit of cooperation that they abided by. As people of African descent, when our ancestors were transported into the Americas, be it the United States or the Caribbean or Latin America, a lot of our traditions and philosophies survived the Middle Passage. So we always had a very cooperative and communitarian mindset as African peoples, and we brought it into the United States and the other parts of the world in which slavery existed. So when we started businesses, a lot of it stemmed from that whole spirit of cooperation. And some of the leading Black business pioneers, they gained a cooperative advantage. We hear a lot about competitive advantage, but African Americans, they gained a cooperative advantage based on how well they treated their customers, their employees, and the wider community. So these businesses took care of the community, and then the care that they exhibited was reciprocated. So those businesses who really showed love and for the community, customers came, right? And then they also focused on dialogue and building relationships and consensus building. So that was part of the original culture of a lot of Black businesses within the United States. And I think we can benefit by going back to those days in which we really valued community and that whole mantra of it takes a village.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor, did you have something to add before we move on?
Yeah, Dr. Prieto tackled it. I think the thing that I could add to that, I'm a first generation American. My parents are from Ghana. And when I travel to Ghana and I look at entrepreneurs there, and when I look at entrepreneurs in the Black community, I see a lot of parallels. We're very creative people. We're very colorful people. And that comes out in the way that we engage in business. Something else that is common too is that we typically engage in entrepreneurship from a perspective of necessity. I think that is a common thread when we think about Black business. Many Black entrepreneurs are sole proprietors or are solopreneurs. And so I think that's something that I'd like to see us be able to evolve as a people, going from necessity-focused entrepreneurship to more innovation-driven entrepreneurship where we can scale our businesses and really, really help our community through job growth and job creation.
Thank you. Lauren?
Yes, thank you. I think that there are some differences between different cultures. I agree with what the gentleman said as far as our spirit being consistent and collaborative and focus on need-driven or solution-focused enterprises. I think that the methodology is a bit different from culture to culture. Thinking specifically of African American business owners, we grew up in a very independent, like it's just me and mine, and we're focusing on shoring up our financial stability. Yes, we want to pay attention and support the community, but I don't want to tell you all of my secrets. I don't want to invite you in on a lot of top important meetings. You know, I'm fearful of you taking my idea. When I think of other cultures, specifically, I'm thinking Asia off the top of my mind, and how they come and how they all collaborate. They all pour into one business at a time, financially, sweat equity. And then once that business is fortified, some of them migrate to a new business and repeat the same system. We don't have that specifically within African-American communities. And I think that although our spirit is there and it's on par, the methodology has to change in order for us to be successful as a people.
Thank you, Lauren. Before we get to, I know Armani wanted to say something too. Before we get to that, I just want to let you know, Lauren, you hit the nail on the head. When I was in college in undergrad, one of our professors, and she was actually an Asian professor, we loved her. She made us work together. She said, we will not, you know, every project we do will be a group project. You will work together. We will hold this ladder. We will help each other climb up. We will work together. So I just want to say thank you for bringing that point up. It's so very important. And I hope that in our schools, even as young as, you know, in elementary school, that we're teaching our kids to work together, to partner together, because there is a seat at the table for everyone. And like Armani said before, her famous quote, there is a seat for everyone. And if it's not, bring your own, bring your folding chair. So thank you so much. Armani, before we wrap up, did you want to chime in on that before we wrap up?
Oh, definitely. And all of you said amazing things. It's difficult to know where to start. So I will approach this as if I'm speaking to someone who's watching this, who wants to be an entrepreneur, or that's a newer entrepreneur and things aren't working, you know, and they're at that point where they want to turn away. It will be difficult in the beginning, you know, to find that collaboration, to find that support, but it is possible. And it sometimes requires you to step outside of your box and to work with people and to collaborate with people that you don't know that well. You know, you may not get that direct support from people who were already in your circle. And I also feel like in the Black community, we are not always encouraging to those who say they want to be an entrepreneur. It's not always the most welcomed idea to present to the family. But I do think that none of that should stop you. It is important to have a team behind you. And one of the greatest resources that I found are using Facebook groups. A lot of people don't understand that social media is a tool. Of course, that tool could be used for pleasure. It could be used for business, but utilizing social media to your best benefit is a great way to find people to help you. In my own personal experiences, I can honestly say Impact DMV would not be where it is without using social media strategically. When we couldn't afford photographers, that's how we were able to find people who were able to do it in kind. You know, when I was trying to create communications and marketing documents and I didn't know how, using social media helped in that light as well. So I do think, like Lauren mentioned, there are differences. I think in the Caucasian community, a lot of times businesses are passed down. A lot of time they can connect to people in their parents' network or in their family's network. And we don't necessarily always have that in our own inner circle, but that doesn't mean that there are not Black people in your community that do have those connections. So continue to push and fight for it, because I promise it is there.
Thank you all. So for the next question, let's do something a little different. Our next question is about the health and wellness of Black business owners. So before you answer, just listen to this. I want you to either give me 3 words to answer or 1 sentence. What ways can Black business owners combat stress and exhaustion? So remember, 1 sentence or just 3 words. Let's see if we can do it. Who wants to go first? Professor, you're smiling.
I could think of a lot of things, but I'll just say meditation. That is something that has really come through for me, especially during the pandemic. Entrepreneurs that are people of color should meditate, because we're always taking on a lot and we need to take time to just sit and reflect.
Thank you. Armani?
My sentence is listen to your body. If you learn to listen to your body, and obviously I am someone who meditates on a daily, regular basis, but when I learned to listen to my body, I became a better entrepreneur. And I also became a better overall person. So I definitely feel like it may seem tough to do in the beginning, but listen to your body.
Thank you. Doctor, you're awfully quiet.
Yeah, this is a tough one. But what comes to mind is, just exhale. I know right now a lot of Black entrepreneurs are going through a tough time during this pandemic. A large number of businesses failed during this time, or due to lack of customers and all these things. Maybe I think around 41%. But just say woosa, exhale, and then re-strategize moving forward.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ms. Lauren Jones.
Yes, my word would probably be life. Well, more than one word. Life-work balance and anti-hustle. And I'm trying to be more mindful by saying life-work balance versus how I've been socially conditioned to say it, which is work-life balance, which is so wrong. It's just how we've been socially conditioned to prioritize our work above ourselves, and our mental health is toxic. So life-work balance, and then anti-hustle. I believe that within the entrepreneurial space, we've been taught to believe you have to work 24/7, 365. You have to work the long nights, the late hours. You're going to miss stuff. You have to pour everything into your business. And that's toxic as well. So anti-hustle and life-work balance.
Thank you. So meditation, exhale, anti-hustle. I love it. Thank you all so much. So for this next one, since you all did so well with the 1 sentence or 3 words, tell me what you need. You guys are Black business owners. Tell me what you need. How can we help you?
I could start this go round. So I think that we need funds.
Okay.
We need funds. And I like what Armani said earlier about how there's a lot of people within the entrepreneurial space. I'm thinking, white people specifically, that's popping in my head right now. They just have access to opportunities and resources that I don't have access to, just off the basis of I am probably either first generation entrepreneur, and I don't have the Rolodex of resources. I can't phone a friend and sit down and have a dinner and just say, hey, I need $100,000. I have this really great idea, blah, blah, blah. So I think that equity and access to funds and just access to opportunities. And I'm thinking about TikTok specifically, how there are Black creatives who are killing it, who are serving, but their access to opportunities are so limited, versus a counterpart of a different ethnic group might do the same exact thing, but they get promoted to Ellen or these shows and they're showcasing what they're about. So I think that if we had some type of platform or access or opportunity that we can leverage, that would really enhance. But until then, supporting what we do on social media. So liking, sharing, attending our events or inviting us to events so we can get in the door, so we can figure out where this table is that we're bringing that folding chair to. Yeah. What's the address? How can we come? So just funds and access to opportunities.
And access to capital. Got it. Who wants to go next? Armani?
Sure. I'm going to be honest and very transparent here and say one thing that we need is honesty. And I think that's a tough pill for a lot of entrepreneurs to swallow. But I think all of us here, we come across businesses or business ideas that aren't necessarily the best ideas. And people struggle telling people that. But I can honestly say, presenting my ideas to people that I trust to be honest and transparent with me have saved me money, have saved me potential wasted time. And I look back and I'm thankful that I trusted those people to give me sound advice, because I could have been walking in the complete wrong direction. So I do think that entrepreneurs, we do need honesty. And on the opposite end of that, we need to be able to take that constructive criticism and use it to our best benefit. So that is one thing that I think we can need.
And that could come from the mentor that you mentioned. You mentioned needing mentors. Got it. Does anybody else want to chime in before we go on? Professor?
Yeah, I'll just say, if you want to support me specifically, you can visit my website and order my new book that's coming out this summer called Black Boy Fly. But more importantly, I want everyone that is watching this to empower another Black entrepreneur. You may be in a position where you can make decisions on who gets hired to do business with your organization. You may have business that you transact with non-Black entrepreneurs, and there's a Black business that you could support. Go out of your way to support a Black entrepreneur in your community, in your family, somewhere in your realm of influence. That's, I think, something we can all do.
Thank you. Doctor, did you have something to add?
Oh, yeah, sure. And we need to have an understanding that not all businesses are created equally, and there are different types of business structures as well. But there are regular folks who are starting cooperatives. That's another line of entrepreneurial activity, that there is a history of African Americans who participated in this type of business in the past. So where we all came together and pooled capital, because of course access to capital is always a struggle. And there's a long history of African Americans pooling their resources, starting these co-ops or cooperatives. But unfortunately, there were some, racists who called those entrepreneurs who started these cooperatives communists, and they call them un-American. And because of that, that whole history of cooperative businesses kind of died down. So I would like to see a resurgence of cooperatives within the African-American community.
Thank you. So you mentioned this a little bit in one of your last questions, Doctor. We want to talk about the current status of Black businesses. Of course, we are still in the midst of a raving pandemic. Before I ask you all any questions, I just want to say, let's congratulate the businesses like yourselves who are here. Let's congratulate the businesses who have been able to sustain. Let's congratulate the businesses who have started during this pandemic. And let's congratulate the businesses who may have failed during this pandemic, because we know you did your best not to fail. So what effect has the pandemic had on Black businesses specifically? If anybody would like to answer that. Doctor?
Oh, yes, it was catastrophic. I want to say the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, they did a study and they found that 41% of Black businesses, went under. That's a mind-boggling number, and in general, I want to say 22% of business ownership in general fell under during this pandemic. So Black businesses were the ones affected the most during this pandemic. And they really tried their best to serve their customers. And a lot of their customers, of course, had jobs and lost their jobs and weren't able to contribute in a meaningful way or in a robust way in terms of partaking with those Black businesses. So a lot of businesses within our community really suffered during this pandemic. But I want to say Biden is he's taken notice of that. And I believe he's trying to get some initiatives in place to support Black businesses, especially those that were affected by the pandemic.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to chime in on this?
Yes, I do. I think that there was a lot of small business burnout throughout the pandemic. And I say that because, specifically speaking from the nonprofit sector, as an entrepreneur, your heart bleeds, period. But your heart bleeds excessively when your community is in peril. And this pandemic brought about health disparities and financial disparities that were already there, but they were exacerbated. So for me, as an entrepreneur in the nonprofit space, providing mental health services, I had to stop myself, which was exhausting, of trying to give my services and supports out for free, 24/7, 365, because that's not a good business model, one. So I did experience a lot of small business burnout. However, I also learned to pivot, which is quintessential as an entrepreneur, realizing when the change has changed or when you need to adjust in order to fit the needs. So I got to develop a smash room in Temple Hills, Maryland, to help relieve stress and frustration out of my community. So no, I wasn't able to extend my office hours and provide therapy and services for free, 24/7, 365. But instead, I created this space where people can come with groups or individuals. They put on protective equipment and they just destroy stuff. You get to bring all of the anger, the frustration, the hurt, the despair, being stuck at home, and come play music and break stuff. So I got to pivot. I've never opened a smash room before, but the pandemic kind of created this new opportunity. People were upset and feeling some type of way, and I wanted to serve a community in a unique way, which would relieve stress off of me and also provide a really fun and unique service. So I think that entrepreneurs that learned to pivot or pivot quickly during the pandemic, they were able to come up with different innovative solutions like that.
Thank you, Lauren, for your giving. I know with us, even at the Prince George's Chamber of Commerce, we wanted to do the same. We were like, how can we help? Whether it be webinars about PPP, webinars about, whatever funding's available, how to get help and who to partner with. I think it's so important. So I thank you personally just for sharing your services and hope it didn't, burn you out. I mean, that's just a lot. So opening a smash room sounds like fun. So thank you so much for that. And just for giving back, even when you didn't really have it to give. So that's very important. Does anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, okay. I just want to say that the pandemic taught us something that I think we've long known about Black people, that we are some of the most resilient people on the planet. That was demonstrated many times over during the pandemic. I personally witnessed many Black businesses close, but those that were able to remain open, I watched them evolve their business models almost overnight to be able to capture either a new market or a new customer, or to just embrace this new reality of business virtually. And so I'm proud of the many entrepreneurs that found a way while everyone was not able to. Those that did were finding opportunities to keep their employees paid, to keep the lights on, to keep business going. And I just want us to celebrate those individuals as well, because they did heroes work, in my opinion.
Thank you, Professor. I couldn't help but notice as well. What did your shirt say? Be the dream?
Be the dream.
Be the dream. I like that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So one of the next things, and let me know if anyone else wants to chime in, I want to ask you a question, but I also want you to tell us how not to be that way. So the question is, what stereotypes and stigmas are associated with Black businesses? But we know a lot of the stigmas and stereotypes, so you can tell me one or two, but I really want to hear how we can overcome that. Like, how do we move past that?
Yeah, I think we're all aware of many of the stereotypes and stigmas, so I won't go into that specifically. What I think as Black people that we can do when it comes to interacting with other Black businesses is to treat them as the businesses that they are. We shouldn't have expectations that services will be rendered to us at a reduced cost because it's a Black-owned business. We should be willing to pay a Black business as much money as we would be willing to pay a non-Black business. I think that's something that I see in my community quite a bit. Also, I think that as Black people, we often have a higher level of scrutiny as it relates to Black entrepreneurs and Black businesses. And I think that that's something we need to park, because we don't do that with other people, but we do that with ourselves.
Thank you. Armani?
So as I mentioned, I'm not going to spend time reiterating things that we already know. We know what those stereotypes are. But you did say something that I really liked, and that was, how can you not be that way? The best advice that I would give entrepreneurs: put customer service first. It can be really frustrating to be a business owner, and you are going to deal with nonsense. You're going to deal with things that you're not going to understand. You're going to deal with things that infuriate you, but put customer service first. And remember that this is still a business. It's not personal. So if something happens in your business that you really don't like, if someone offends you, if you get a bad review, you don't need to put that on social media. Your business can just be wholly positive. Your interactions with clients, customers, program participants, it can always be in a positive light. And one thing that I like to live by is that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So as an entrepreneur, I highly recommend walking in that light. A lot of times before the LLC is acquired, before the incorporated status is acquired, we were already doing the work for the business. You put so much time and energy into this. It is like your baby. Do not lose that because of something that you did in 5 minutes. Really try to stay positive and keep customer service first.
Thank you. Very important. Thank you. Thank you. Doctor?
Oh, yes, I'll echo what Amani said. We have to meet and exceed customer expectations. I'm a historian. I like to quote from the past. Even Du Bois in 1898, he said, we need to put our customers first and try to encourage customer loyalty. But he also said something that was quite telling. He said, we should always be prepared to support Black businesses, even to our own disadvantage, because some of the Black businesses are, of course, smaller and they may not have economies of scale. So we should be prepared to support our businesses, even if it hurts our pocketbooks a little bit, because we have to ensure the survival of our Black-owned businesses. They don't always have economies of scale where they could sell products and services at a very low price.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Great point.
I was going to chime in on what Dr. Prieto said. There's a book by Maggie Anderson called Our Black Year, and I encourage everybody to take a look at that book. Her family in Chicago essentially said for a 12-month period of time, we're only going to buy Black. Now, think about where you live and think about how difficult that is. And she had to make some serious life decisions as it related to travel and other things by taking this pledge to only spend money with the Black-owned business. So where do you buy gas? How do you fly? All these types of decisions come into play. So it's a great story. It kind of goes back to Leon's point. Something I think maybe not the full 12 months, but we should challenge ourselves on a weekly basis to spend money with the Black business.
Thank you, Professor. Lauren?
Yes, so my perspective is focusing on the entrepreneur versus the business and going macro to micro. I think entrepreneurship as a whole focuses on addressing some type of financial disparity and leaning on entrepreneurship to provide economic or financial stability and prosperity within the entrepreneur space. With that being said, I also feel like the entrepreneur kind of holds on to an amount of pressure that we get, whether from the family or whether from the community. And I compare it almost to athletes, where we have that one athlete, that rising star, who the whole community is kind of rooting on them. Like, you guys, you're going to do big things. You're going to get drafted, or you're going to go to the NBA. You're going to be a millionaire. We can't wait to see it. And we're going to sit back and watch. And when it happens, we all going to show up to that house. And I think that entrepreneurs almost have that same pressure. Like, I grew up in a society or in a community or in a family where there's some financial hardships, and I know there's some problems going on, and there's some challenges that I can address and I want to face, and not just for me, but for my family, and not just for my family, but for the community as a whole. Like, I have to succeed to get us out of this, whatever it is. So I think as entrepreneurs, especially Black entrepreneurs, we have that pressure. So one way to address, I had to set that up to answer the question. So to answer the question, how can we mitigate that, is one, a level of self-awareness, to realize that to be a Black entrepreneur, there is this pressure that you didn't ask for to be successful. You are literally carrying all of your ancestors on you when you say you're a Black-owned business. So realizing that and being self-aware and letting you know that it's okay and you don't have to carry that pressure alone, because all of us are carrying it. So by collaborating, by finding a mentor, like Armani said earlier, by growing your network and collaborating, the team can carry that pressure. So to help alleviate that, it's not heavy if there's multiple people carrying that load.
I thank you all so much. If no one has anything else to add, I just want to thank you all. This has been such an informative and robust discussion. I'm so grateful for Professor Isaac Adai, Dr. Leon Preto, Lauren Jones, Armani McMillan. I'm grateful for Joe's Movement Emporium and Creative Suitland for hosting this. I'm thankful again to our sponsors, the Pearl Elegance Foundation, the Greater Washington Community Foundation, and the PhD Project. I thank you all for joining us this evening. If you have any questions or you have any suggestions, or you want to reach out to our distinguished panelists, who I'm so grateful to be sitting in this virtual room with, please visit the Joe's Movement Emporium site. Thank you all, and I hope you all have a great night.